And while I'm at this part, before we hop on to studying the forms of the eyelids and the eye, as well as the brow ridge, let's just take a quick look at the cheek and the cheekbone area. And it should be just relatively quick. Now, depending on the cheekbone and where it is, higher or lower on the person, it could change, but for the most part, you're going to see some kind of through line. So if the cheekbone, you could see it right there pretty clearly, is going to have a sort of apex here, and then it'll meet with the lower jaw. But I like to kind of find this very special S shape, and you can sort of see the reverse of it right here, right? So if you can get that as a sort of form line, you can know the geometry of the rest of the face. I mean the cheek, right? And for some people, obviously, this might be a different shape. So if the person had more weight on them, you might see something like this or whatever, but it will still sort of follow that kind of initial shape, but obviously in a different position. In this case, it would be like that. Chipmunk. And it could be a double chin, and that'll have its own geometry. So in that case, we can sort of see that the geometry here is sort of like a low poly version. It's like the cheekbone, and then the forehead has a shape like that, or where it starts to merge towards the forehead. You have the frontalis of the forehead here. But the cheekbone is a kind of shape like that. And if we kind of imagine that S shape, we can fill in this with another shape. But then there's a turn at this line. So we can actually use a different color for that. And it turns towards this way. Let's actually just draw the shape of the eye. It goes all the way down and meets the other geometry. But knowing that there's a turn here is the most important part with this kind of study. And if we just use what we know in terms of geometry and rendering, these polygons are facing to the left. So we're going to just put some light here. These polygons are facing to the left, but they're slightly angled down. So we're going to go a little bit darker and just shade that in. And then these polygons are facing to the right, or at least halfway towards that. We're going to go a little darker, darker than that. Right? And so that doesn't mean the value structure will always be like this because light changes, but knowing that there's going to be the planes of the face here separated by this kind of this line from the forehead to the S shape right there. Right? And what I mean by that is like, well, there's an S, right? But if you make that thinner, you have that kind of S curve. And that's what's happening here. And you could pretty easily see what would happen if we continue the geometry here. And of course, if you can have that S shape and then mirror it, you'll get the other side. And that's what this is going to be. Right? And if we just sneak in some light on the geometry here, and it's going to ping pong my eyes back and forth. Since we just studied all this, we know the geometry of it. It just reads as a face, right? So simplify low poly geometry your way through understanding the form. Might as well just take this a little further. It's a really fun exercise. Because in this case, it's not really about like accuracy in terms of measuring and making it photorealistic. It's about internalizing the geometry, internalizing the forms, and letting them be something you can play around with later. And I get, since we're on that topic, it's going all over the place now. I could quickly sketch that S shape on this kind of random whatever, and we know that the S shape goes up here into the forehead. And I know that turns this way, and there'll be another one on the other side. Granted, there's a cranium back there. And then there's going to be the cheese wedge shape there for the nose, then the mouth, sphere for the chin, negative space here for the chin, the upper part of the chin, lips, the double barrel shotgun thing there, brow ridge, eye socket. Knowing what these forms are will let me light it from any direction. So if I have that all gray and I say, all right, well, from the reference, we had it from the left side. So that's easy. We just follow the reference. But what if we want to challenge ourselves and say, well, what if the light's over here being cast from above, right? In that case, we know the forms. And we know that the top sides that are aiming upward are going to receive light. That easy, right? And over here, the frontalis part of the forehead is going to receive light. And if we want to cast light over here, obviously this stuff is facing away. It won't receive light. It's going to receive light right here. And then, of course, there's going to be the nose casting a shadow onto that. That's why you often find in photography or screenshots or even just looking at people, there's going to be a little triangle of light there, depending on the person, of course. And then we have light over here on the top of the cylinder of the mouth. And then here as well. This is a sphere right there. And over here, the cheekbone will receive light and then fade down a little bit. And then the cheek will be kind of facing away, but sort of rounding upward. And we can just sneak in a little bit of light on the eyelid. Now when we zoom out, it just feels like a face is there looking at us. And then we can actually cast some shadows from the nose and from the lips and so on and so forth. Right? So this is the power of understanding the forms of the face, which is why I find this lesson of this course to be one of the most important ones. Keep doing the assignments over and over again. Follow this over and over again until it's just so second nature to you that you don't have to really think about it. So you draw a nostril, corners of the mouth, and we'll cover the geometry of the eyes in the next part of this lesson. But yeah, this is kind of just showing the proof of what you could do with this process.